You're always looking for sexy. Everyone's always looking for sexy. I'm always looking for sexy. But smart is sexy. It is as if I know how wonderful this person, this talent is. I'd rather see a bit of a miracle and then just encourage it to keep being miraculous, because the thing about people, especially when they're young and coming along, is that they are racked with so much insecurity. They don't know how fabulous they are.
He seemed to be at the pulse of the underground in New York City. He was always sort of in that world, Lou Reed, Iggy, the whole Warhol gang. He was sort of the mayor of New York City when it came to that.
Danny's a connector, like a fuel line in a car, which is, by the way, one of the most dangerous places, a place where things are liable to erupt.
He's been handmaiden to the gods. He's been midwife to, some of the most important people in music. And I remember the first time I went to his house and I found the Wall of Fame. And he was like, yeah, here's Janis and Patty, and various stories, denigrating or otherwise, about all of them. And then there was a picture of me, in a mirror, putting my makeup on. I was really overwhelmed.
Somehow I was preparing my first trip to New York, and so Danny said, well, stay with me. Really, Danny was my introduction to New York and the East Coast. And Danny was also the first person that explained to me the importance of the cover of a magazine, that meant something. We just put any random thing on the cover. He said, no, when you do that, it signifies great importance. Again, that was another revelation to me. So, kind of just, Danny was an early teacher.
Danny was one of those people who was into rock and roll and the rebellious edge that it had, and he chose to work with the most rebellious of those people. His art is knowing how to place people within a context, and that context within the culture.
All of the bands that were in Danny's universe, whether he worked with them or not, had a great, great influence because they were doing something that nobody else was doing. They created themselves out of the stuff of dust.
He speeded up the evolution in a tremendous way. Nothing was ever the same after that. This music went on to take over the world.
I was born in Brooklyn. My father was in and out of the war, so there was a lot of grandparents and aunts. There were 4 sisters, and their idea of sinning as teenagers was to go out and eat shrimp in a Chinese restaurant. God bless that generation. That's how they defied tradition and parent control. They ate shrimp. And I grew up with them, so they were sort of 4 auntie mames in a way. My life was mainly my hobbies. I had no friends. I went to school like everybody else. I got all A's. I took a lot of amphetamine because my father was a doctor, so I'd been taking amphetamine every day since I was 10. But so was everyone else, my mother. It was a bowl of Desoxin on the dining room table. I would have M&Ms. I don't know what Italians have, but we have Desoxin and Dexamine. I always went against the grain, whether it was because I was a little faggot, which everyone else knew but me, whether it was because I didn't like my parents' taste in anything. Oh, it's Daniel's bar mitzvah. Okay. This quality. This is high class. Okay, there's my mother and my father and my little brother. The traditional kiss. Traditional pomade. It's my brother. Isn't this mortifying? Now, this main thing at a bar mitzvah is all kids. Then it was just a few kids, and I hated kids. They had, scraped the bottom of the genealogy barrel. Oh, yay, hooray. Aren't they nice? It's amazing to have something like that, isn't it? Forest Hills, home of the Ramones, right? When I was a teenager and I was at Penn, There was no right table. I was in the wrong table from the get-go. The wrong city, the wrong school. My best friend, Steve Levine, said you have to see the singer, and it was Nina Simone.
Say love me and leave me and let me be lonely. You won't believe me, but I love you only. I'd rather be lonely than happy with somebody else.
She would come and sit with the guys from Penn. She was so, I wouldn't say insecure, but she was humble. I mean, do you really think I'm good kind of thing? You think what I'm doing will work? Well, I don't know. We were 15. As long as it's good enough for them, you can't think of what noise this is going to make in the history of history. And that was part of our little crowd trying to escape the penitude, penal etude. The other schools look so sexy compared to all the Jew finance majors at Penn. Oh yeah, I had straight A's. I was 6th in my class at 1,000, and the youngest. One of our immediate crowd was a flaming faggot who loved to get fucked. So I knew all the juicy ways what they did. The night I graduated college, we went out to celebrate, and one of the things we did was to go take a look at the promenade in Brooklyn Heights. They said it was very cruisy, and so we went up and looked at it, and, you know, I'm 19, I graduated college, and I stood there and I did everything he said they do. Like you look and you wink and nod and all. It's like you do a silent hello, Seal, or would you like to come over? This is what they say. Well, I felt compelled to tell him on the way back to his house, I've never done this before. Of course, he said, oh, it'll be all right. So I figured, I always thought I would fall in love at Harvard, but I didn't know how to fall in love at Harvard Law School, where everyone was 23 and wearing a suit and a tie. No one had sat next to me in property or civil procedure that I wanted to go and have a coffee date with. So I had to call Keith. I haven't been able to meet anyone like us. I don't know what I said. I don't know what word I used. Homosexual, I guess. Oh, there were homosexuals in Boston? And he said, yes, there are 2 bars in Boston. The Punch Bowl and the Napoleon Club.
See what the boys in the back room will have, and tell them I'm having the same.
I met people like Donald Lyons and Hal Peterson and Harold Talbot, real aristocrats of the mind and spirit. I was in the 99th percentile in the law school aptitude test. No one could believe it because I was flaky. I stopped going to class. It was so boring, and I hung out with a bunch of sort of dissolute faggots. Shoplifted a lot, charged a lot, ran around Harvard Square in a camel's hair coat, and fucked a lot. That's what I always wanted to do was, fuck at Harvard, and I got a big chance to do it, so I did it. Coming back to New York and moving to Greenwich Village, where, I stayed in this hotel, and out the back window was lesbians literally having pissing contests. Really, you think it's just a word, but they really were doing it. They would press their pissies and see how just strong they could make it so they could pay further. That's what it means, isn't it? Always what it means. But dykes could do it too. And oh God, I'm here. Welcome to Greenwich Village. So, I had 9 years of that before the Stonewall.
When I got to New York and I met Danny and Jackie Curtis, it was all gay, but it wasn't homosexual. It was really gay, I guess. The definition of gay was just, ha-ha, so what? When you talk about Danny being out, he was never in. We never came out to our parents. What's the point of that? Why do we want to upset those old people for? We were okay. We don't have to bother them with it. So gayness was not a point of reference for any of us. It was certainly not a definition.
There was a columnist named Lee Mortimer who would disclose and expose gay bars in New York. It's like finding a, Protestant in Spain. They really were rooting them out. I didn't feel harassed by the police, but I didn't confront them like they did at the Stonewall either. Fuck it. We had a good time, and we all had to fuck each other because it was like lesbians. I couldn't go to the fireman's ball. And with the gay liberation came all these gay firemen and stuff. you know, that's nice, you know, be happy. But I mean, I didn't wait all my whole life for firemen to come out as a group. Who cares? I was in search of crazy people. I just come from 3 years in Philadelphia. What else do I want? Christians? I want like people with a insanity in their blood. It's the same Sunday that in the New York Times magazine, the lead story, it was the soup cans. It was revolutionary because that was really pushing the bucket or whatever you, cutting the envelope. Because everything good starts off being hated by the New York Times. Andy was sitting on the sofa with Gerard, and there was a woman crawling around the floor screaming, "Andy, I love you, I love you." It was Ivy Nicholson. It was Andy's girl of the year. She was in love with him. And when she got close enough, he sort of kicked her in the chin, and she just moaned and went over to one of the windows and started to climb out. I said, "Oh my God, someone is going to jump." And I put my arms around her. And then I said, there, you know, just don't do something so silly. And then, I don't know, she took a sleeping pill. Unless did someone give her a Quaalude. And then as we were leaving, someone said to me, now I thought it was Andy. Boy, we were all hoping she would jump. You know, you sort of spoiled it for everyone. I was uncool by saving this person's life at a party. But the lesson is, it's sort of an upper class thing. You don't get all excited about anything. And I thought, that suits me fine. That's it. I was not worried about being uncool anymore because I knew all it took was to do nothing. That's the whole motto of that, what that world was saying. You're better off doing nothing. Look at it and let the looking at it become the thing that you're doing.
Once you were in that, you know, those silver aluminum rooms, you were in the world. You know, it was like going through the looking glass. It was Action Central. People were coming to you. What a good way to be in New York. It's the reason anyone comes to New York. Your point of contact with, like, whatever is happening and recognized and creative and all that. That was the factory. That was as in as you could get. So then it's career time. I'm living in the Village. I'm going to have a career in publishing, and I'm going to start at the bottom. So I sell books at Doubledays. Then I got a job through an agency at Liquor Store Magazine, the monthly magazine that goes to all owners of all liquor stores in the United States. The day of the assassination, you know, we were all sitting around the receptionist's desk. She had a radio. I'm like, you know, was paralyzed, and the boss came back from lunch and said, "What's going on here?" And someone, you know, managed to get out that the president had just been killed. And he said, too bad they didn't get his brother.
I decided to have a party because it was 1 week later. The Warhols were there and the San Remos were there and also all the people from Harvard, and they sort of all met. Oh, the only thing that we had to drink was vodka and grapefruit juice, which is just wonderful because it's cheap and it's potent and no one knows what the proportions are. You can just turn them up or turn them down. No one on earth can tell until you see the effects. It's like a silent, tasteless poison.
In the middle of the evening, the door opened and Nico came in, dressed in tattered Levi's and tattered Levi jacket. She came in with two men, one of whom was a Chilean count and the other of whom was an English dandy. And the room of beautiful people just turned. She walked over to the table on which there was a punch bowl and dipped the ladle in and threw her head back and just, man, showstopper. My love and I are fleeing. That's how I met Nico. She crashed my party. Then she got, she was in New York, so she and the Warhols picked up on each other and she began to sing with the Velvet Underground.
Being in a world of New York in the 60s was transcending everything to me. I was with people who were smart and sexy and famous and brilliant and talented, and what I had always wanted was a pool from where I could find friends. That's what motivates me, is to be and the right crowd. In 1964, Tommy Goodwin, everyone's favorite, most beloved, beautiful guy, drove down to New York from Cambridge, and he said, "Can my friend Edie stay at your apartment tonight?"
I guess it was the first place she stayed when she moved here. I think she was going to model then or something. She was going to do something fashiony. Then she'd met Andy, and then she changed her hair, and she changed her look. I remember the first time he said he was going to do a screen test with her. I thought, what, you know, gee, she's just another pretty face. And then we saw the screen test like 2 days later, and it was just a revelation for everybody who was there. I mean, because Andy had seen what she'd had. She was bigger than life. And that's what a star is, you know, someone who could stand the spotlight and continue to surprise and delight her audiences. I mean, she's always attracted and was attracted to the most brilliant and crazy people. And a lot of these people were, you know, probably mostly gay, but they were in love with her. You know, I mean, seriously in love with her. I know Andy was in love with her.
Really?
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, he was as in love with her as any man could be with any woman. Whoever you were, I mean, next to her, you were strong in a way, you know, because she was so weak in so many ways, and she was so strong in so many ways, you know. I mean, I don't know. I mean, people are just born. They just keep turning up in every generation.
So Paul came down, and it was his first night ever at the factory. Andy had the camera pointed at the center of this group of people, and he said to Paul, "Oh, you know anything about movies?" And, "Oh, I can't get all these people in the picture. I don't know what to do." And Paul said, "Well, there's the thing called a pan, and you very slowly, you know, move the eyepiece, whatever, what you're looking through, and until you get all the people in." Wow, I didn't really think you could really do that. I always seen it in movies, but I didn't know how to do it. Oh, thank you. And this is how he, you know, learned to make movies, as if he made movies. It's such a good metaphor for everything. We just pretended there was no known way of doing it, and maybe someone knew a known way of doing it, and admit what we don't know, and be proud of what we don't know, and make a virtue of what we don't know, and turn a lack of expertise, like a virtuosity, into an asset.
John was very intense and poetic and Welsh. Lou was very arrogant and difficult. And you must remember, everybody in New York was in love with Lou Reed. That crush on Lou was an energy that fueled a great deal of what went on in and around the band. It became corrupted by the presence of a lot of extraneous elements, like a psychedelic light show. I really think that's the reason that the band didn't go the route of rock and roll success. John and Lou and Nico, who were so intense and incredible, were covered over with flashing polka dots. I used to tell Lou and John all the time, "Why don't you get rid of that fucking light show?" And what was their response at the time? They shrugged. I mean, that was their response to anything. You know, if someone said that to me, I would have shrugged too. Andy was inspirational and conveying to him the importance of work. And I think Lou would tell you this himself, and I mean to put words in his mouth, but I mean, he would say, you know, "How many songs did you write today, Lou?" And Lou would say 6, and Andy would say, "Well, that's not enough, you have to work harder." It was difficult to prove your legitimacy. I mean, everyone was a freak. If you were associated with Andy Warhol, unless you were Andy himself, then you were just considered an underground drug trash. Erase these bananas and whip dancers from your mind and listen to songs of one of the greatest songwriters of all time. Then there was an ad in the New York Times. Expanding teen magazine seeks writer-editor, young, hip, knowledge of pop scene, some experience. Well, I thought he meant the pop art scene. So I wrote a letter to the box at the Times. It was all about how I believed in great, beautiful people and I loved kids. And also I dropped a lot of names like, you know, Andy Warhol and Edie Sedgwick and like that. I thought that's what he meant. So I went in for an interview and, you know, I turned his head around, I guess.
How did you feel once you were right in the middle of pop?
Hey, Mom, what? To go see a band? 5 cute boys at once? As Pat Hartley used to say, you bet your fucking ass I'm a groupie. So I thought, well, you know, hey, the Velvet Underground, my favorite band. I know all about it. You know, what do you have to know? Because back then you really didn't have to know very much. It was the year that Everything Wonderful was happening. It was 65, 66, which was the Doors' first album, the Mamas and Papas' first album, Aftermath from the Stones. I never liked the Beatles, but they had some album then that was okay, Revolver. There's all these first albums or watershed albums that didn't sound like anything else in the world. I mean, you just knew this is the place to be. Everything that you get in the music business is when you first get in is just given to you by press agents. The first one I met was a woman named Connie DeNave. Her assistant took me to, guess where? Brooklyn. These 3 women came out in bright yellow dresses, and I went crazy. That was my first maybe rock and roll go crazy moment, like it lifted off my seat. Earthquaked by the Martha and the Vandellas. Boy, if that's what this is about, it's going to be a fun business. The Rolling Stones were giving a press party in the form of a boat ride. I got there late. My photographer was the reason I was late because he arrived with no film and missed the fucking boat. The limo pulled up and Gloria Stavers got out. She was my arch rival then. She was like way number 1 in the field. This guy in a rowboat came up and said, you 2 guys want to ride to that boat? It'll be $20. I said, Gloria, you want to go in it? She said, I wouldn't pay 20 cents for the fucking Rolling Stones. I got back in her car and drove away. The boat docked. Beautiful girl got off, carrying a camera. It was Linda Eastman. Her photographs were so great. And we became best friends.
She had this quality that I find in Libra females, is that men have a tendency to dance for them, to please them. She always had that quality. She took the best pictures of pretty people. And I wanted to write a lot about the Byrds and Jess Elliott and the Velvet Underground.
The publisher was very canny, and he investigated London literary agencies and bought a bunch of interviews that Maureen Cleave, a journalist and a friend of the Beatles, had done in England. And they had Paul McCartney saying, it's a lousy country where anyone black is a dirty nigger. Wow, that was nice. And John Lennon said, I don't know what'll go first, rock and roll and Christianity. We're more popular than Jesus. And here I was with this magazine. I was competing with 16. I didn't want to do, you know, how nice is Herman to his family or, you know, something, or the secret of, you know, Paul Revere's, you know, favorite color. I just want to do something different. I said, well, let's just, you know, hey, put it out. See what happens. Maybe we'll get famous.
If it had said we're more, television is more popular than Jesus, I might have got away with it. You know, but as I just happened to be talking to a friend, I used the word Beatles as a remote thing, not as what I think, as Beatles as though those other Beatles, like other people say it. I just said they are are having more influence on kids and things than anything else, including Jesus. But I said it in that way, which is the wrong way. Yap, yap.
The magazine came out on the eve of the Beatles tour in the summer of 1966. Some proper little Christian teenager saw this thing about Christianity, the word Christ or something, whatever. I guess these people juicing or drooling or whatever. I just cannot understand why I have to share this country with them. Actually, all in a thing
It's a
with
big socialist experiment.
twat steaming, and ran to a disc jockey in, don't you know, it's got there's 3 states it could be in Alabama. And he got outraged, and he went on the radio on his show and called attention to this blasphemy on the part of the beloved Beatles, because remember, guys didn't like them because they looked like they girly with that hair.
If you, as an American teenager, are offended by statements from a group of foreign singers which strike at the very basis of our existence as God-fearing, patriotic citizens, then we urge you to take your Beatle records, pictures, and souvenirs to the pickup points about to be named, and on the night of the Beatles' appearance in Memphis, August 19th, they will be destroyed in a huge public bonfire at a place to be named soon. Stay tuned to Wacky for further developments.
You know, they were playing stadiums and giant things. It was 10 days in America, I think. And they flew into Memphis, and someone, as they say, looked out the window and said, wow, there's snow on the ground. Wow, it's Memphis, you know, the beloved city of Elvis and Son Studios. And they got closer, and someone said, that's not snow, it's the KKK.
The Beatles made a statement in all the newspapers that they're getting better than Jesus himself, and the Ku Klux Klan, being a religious order, is going to come out here the night that they appear at the Coliseum here, and we're going to demonstrate with different ways and tactics to stop this performance. We're known as a terror organization. I think we have
a terror organization.
We have ways and means to stop this if this is going to be the case. Yes.
What ways and means?
Well, I don't want to say this, but there'll be a lot of surprises Monday night, I believe, when they get here.
What did I do? Really? I didn't have to put Jesus Christ on the top of the page and the word nigger on the... When's the last time you saw the word nigger on the cover of a magazine for 11-year-old? For anybody. Anybody. He's saying it like, that's bad to call someone a nigger. What's wrong with that? I didn't love them that much, but I certainly loved them more than Jesus. You know, I mean, they're more important to me than to Jesus, right? I mean, than Jesus was. What did Jesus ever fucking do for me? If you think I did that to cause them trouble, no. Only but in the sense that it's about time. You know, look at Lenny Bruce. It's about time more people got in trouble for saying the right things. Look what Dylan is doing. You know, it's all emerging now. I wanted to make some trouble. I didn't want them to have to live through a week of death threats. I wouldn't want that for anyone. I wouldn't want them to be killed, but I think some death threats would be... I can think of some people who could use some death threats. Oh, we know what the happy ending is? Lightning hit the radio station in Alabama and it fell down.
It's the happy ending to the story.
That's true. Isn't that great? So anyhow, the real end is that many years later when I, for a while, was acquainted with Paul socially because he was married to my dear friend Linda Eastman McCartney. And I said to him once, you know, Paul, remember with the magazine, with the more popular? Yeah. I said, that was me. And he said, so you're the one. Because they really did never perform again after that Sunday night at Candlestick Park. And they said,
so you, Danny Fields, broke the Beatles up.
No, I didn't break the Beatles
That's what you told me.
No.
Don't be backtracking now that we're on the air.
That's the kind of, look, if you had to, you know, sell a candy bar in 20 words or less, I want to ask you if you think that prediction was accurate, by the way. I don't know what'll go first, rock and roll or Christianity. Somehow I think it's rock and roll. The first time I heard they had a cute lead singer was a friend of mine named Pat Hartley, who was a movie actress, and she came screaming into Max's one night and said, "Oh, there's the cutest lead singer of a new group playing it on Dean's Folded Doors," at which point I said, I promised their person that I would go in and look at them. And it was this little small audience, and you could stand or sit or just sort of mill around, and there were maybe 24 people paying attention.
I came from the Dick Clark era. So if you saw somebody that was really attractive, Dick would play it. Jim Morrison, when I saw his picture, I said, if he could read the phone book on key, you're going to make millions. I met Danny when I went to see the group rehearsing.
And I said, I'm the New York press agent for the door. He said, how wonderful, a press agent. We've never had a press agent connected with this company.
But who decided that you were the press agent for the Doors?
I did.
He kind of appeared to be a hippie yenta. I told Jack that I met somebody that knew everything and could wind up, with his knowledge, going after specific types of acts.
So I went up to Elektra and I said hi, and they said, oh, well, boy, are we happy to have a press agent. We've never seen one before. And I said, oh, I'm glad to be of help. By the way, I must say that they were doing one very intriguing song last night. I said it was real catchy. So they played me their first single, which was Break On Through. I said, that's not it. Something about a fire. Oh, Light My Fire. Oh, that can't be a single. It's 7 minutes long. And I said, that's too bad. Can't you cut it down? And they said, well, you can't cut down a song. It's heretical. You can't do that. Finally, they had figured that it could be cut down. And they remembered that I was the first person outside the company who suggested that they really try to cut it down. And of course, with the release of that song, that became a different record company. Then they called me up from Elektra and asked me to come and work for them as a full-time to create a publicity department.
Danny was plugged into another part of the scene, the part of the scene that was bubbling under. But also, he stayed up later at night, and that was a big plus for us, because then Elektra was on the street while I was asleep.
We had great plans for him in our head then, because the buzz was starting to invent him as a major sex object. Gloria had seen pictures of him, was intrigued with his record and his photographs. This was my next thing, was I was going to go to California to set up a phone call between him and Gloria. I mean, this is how expense accounts worked in those days. I flew to California to set up a phone call. People in California, it was a joke then, but it was true. They would do one thing a day. And if you asked someone what they did, they would say, I washed my hair today. Long pause, and that was it. And you would say, oh, I, made a salad.
And that wasn't because of drugs?
No, I think they were all just winding down so fast and finding that they could, if everybody did this, then nobody would ask anybody to do anything more. And I saw them perform in San Francisco. It was very jolly. And I went backstage. I was horrified. It was like a sort of statue just sitting there, and there were all these grouping things, dirty girls, and just rags and dirt and things falling off them, and too much eye makeup and a dopey glazed look. I was concerned that this was bad for his image. What if a photographer got this? And Gloria had told me that they're always supposed to be alone. Alone is sexy. You're never supposed to see them with a girl. And I made him make the call to Gloria. She asked him her questions. I got on the phone with her. She said, that was very interesting. I look forward to meeting this young man. And then, as we were about to leave, I had a little electric bulb in my head. And I said, say, Jim, I'm staying with a interesting chanteuse called Nico up in the hills. And I thought I would bring him up there, and then he would fall in love with Nico. And then he would see the error of his ways in letting all these slimy little groupies, and he would never settle for a woman less beautiful or mystical or exotic than Nico. And since there weren't too many, then he would never have too many girlfriends, and my plot would be on its way. We finally got up to the house, and Nico was standing in a doorway, and he just looked at her, and she looked at him, and then they both cast their glances downward. And they stared at some imaginary spot on the floor in between them. And I tried to start a little chatteroony, and I saw this was going nowhere, that this was some kind of thing they were acting out. And I came back about an hour later, they were still in the exact same positions. They hadn't moved.
And they hadn't said anything?
They hadn't said anything. This is their way of acknowledging, you know, you're a beautiful, special, poetic person, I suppose. Edie was after I had some pills with me. I always traveled with a little drug case then. I hid them somewhere under a bed and under a mattress and between two blankets and another mattress, and she got them. She found them, and she took about half of everything that was there. I don't know how she did. I don't know when she was in the room, but she did it. She was magical. She was having an affair with Dino Valenti. She wrote, "Come on, everybody, shine on your brother, let's love one another." And the evening wore by, and the day wore by, and he and I went up to the room, and we started smoking a lot of hash. I started making a major speech to him about, I have these things in mind for you, and life is a roller coaster, and stardom is a trip, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just sounding like every movie I had ever seen about, you know, what's in store and play the game, and he would just open his palm about every 5 minutes and ask for another drug. Incredible amount of hash. About 6 hits of Orange Sunshine.
Nobody in those days got scared about, like, taking too much or
I
dying.
was scared. I thought he was going to die. I had never seen. I mean, this was like enough drugs for me and everybody I met in like 2 weeks in California.
But you kept giving it to him.
And I kept giving to him. He wouldn't answer. And I would say, well, what do you think about that flight of brilliance, Jim? Got any more acid, man? In the middle of the night, David Newman came running into my room and said, "Oh my God, you have to see what's happening." And she was in the courtyard. She was crying and screaming, and he was naked, like on top of this house, and he was walking on it, like jumping over the gaps, totally naked. Jesus, what if he falls off? I'm not gonna lose my job. That's all I could think of. Who cared about him? She came flying into my room and threw herself on the bed, and she was crying hysterically. You know, I never found out what had happened. I mean, he is so evil. Oh, he is so evil. Oh, no, Nico, calm down, go to bed. He's just stoned. I went to his car, and I took the keys out of the ignition and put them under the floor mat. The next morning dawned, and he said, "Give me my car keys." And I said, "No, you're in no condition to drive." And he was not smiling because it totally reversed everything that he stood for and everything that he tried to project. Nico and Edie suggested we go over to some friend of theirs' house who had a swimming pool. And we got to this house, he didn't have a bathing suit. So I went through this pile of bathing suits and I said, "Here, Jim, this looks like it will fit you. Put this on and then we will go swimming." "Where's my car keys, man?" I said, "We'll find them later, Jim. Put this on." That's when he took off his thing and he got naked and I saw his cock, which was very big.
What do you mean very big?
It was long. It was like a salami. It was long. We all drove back to the house. We found that all the dining room chairs had been put on the table, and there was a still from Chelsea Girls. On the back of it said, "Jim, your ass is mud. Call us and get to rehearsal fast." I said, "Have you looked under the mat of your car? Perhaps you put the keys there, as so many people do." And he gave me a look like, "Oh, so that's where you hit him." And he got him, and he drove away. And he hated me from that point on. He was constantly trying to get Jack Holzman to fire me.
Why?
From Elektra Records. Well, because I had kidnapped him.
Jim got really pissed, and he called me, and he says, "Keep Danny Fields away from me, and I'm going to call Jack now."
The only other person I knew who wasn't a big fan of Danny's was Jim Morrison. If you get too close to one of your artists personally, that when you have to sit down and have a hard talk, it's tougher to do. But we needed someone to stay close to that group.
And you felt Danny was too close?
I have no idea.
In his later days, he is said to have become nicer. However, when I went to visit his widow to give her my condolences, the lovely Pamela, who didn't live long after that. And the dog kept jumping on me, and she told me it was Jim. And I went, and he vomited on me. I swear to God, it's the truth. I have witnesses. And, you know, he won't die.
The reincarnation.
So he doesn't need a reincarnation. He is incarnated at all times.
This is a song that we first sang together in a hotel room in Newport.
That's right. That's right, at the
About 10 years
festival.
ago, yeah.
It was.
We sang it all night.
I know.
Yes, I loved you in the morning, our kisses deep and warm on your hair.
Danny was one of the people that just flipped out over Leonard Cohen's music. He just thought it was wonderful. And we all were at Newport learning, Hey, That's No Way to Say Goodbye. And Danny was singing, and we were all, of course, drinking and carousing and having a great time.
I decided to take acid because I was near the water. And I always found that when I tried it in the city, I'd start hallucinating over an oil slick. Oh, those colors. So I thought, you know, nature is better. I didn't realize I would end up in the hotel room of two superhuman or extrahuman projective artists. And I'm on the floor exploring E=mc² /
She looked over at me and she said, "Oh, I have to show you the sunrise on the cliffs." Because, you know, she's a Taurus, she's the Earth Mother. And she's there to respond to the needs of people who she's with. And she took me out. They propped me up and put me in a car, and we drove out to the cliffs. And Leonard and I, you know, just stood and laughed and talked about everything.
Anybody who will take you for a walk by the ocean when you're on acid is saving probably both lives. He was part of the fabric of what was going on culturally in the city, not just music, but the cultural involvement of people who were against the war and people who wanted to see a more loving culture and create different kinds of music and different kinds of events. I didn't hang out with a fast, druggy crowd. He really understood that I was not the real folk singer deal. I was something else that very few people really understood. I think that went a long way in his being able to really do things with my records and with me as an artist that were appropriate and that kind of took me to the edge and pushed me over, but not too far.
What the company Freak was supposed to be a liaison primarily between both the artists and the younger community in the communications area, the writers and editors. Having not existed before, it's up to the person who takes it to invent it. And then it becomes not a job, but a role, as McLuhan defined a role. And versus a job is something which can be replaced by a machine.
In the summer of 1966 in Los Angeles, I met the legendary Billy James, an executive at Elektra Records Hollywood. He sat barefoot on his desk. He was the coolest guy of all. And so he became a role model, I guess still is. God bless him.
The word freak is defined in my OED as a sudden or causeless turn of the mind or disposition of mind that is subject to such humors. I also thought of the jester, and then I thought of Mercury. I thought of the messenger. And then I thought of the Jungian archetype of the eternal boy. There is the somehow different aspect to the freak, and it sometimes creates harmony among one's colleagues, and sometimes it creates discomfort.
I thought there should be a drug album because, especially Elektra, they had when I was in college, they recorded these lusty university songs. Beer, you kind of drink, and cook that beer or whatever you do to it. Why not have a smoking song? I just thought, how do you do it? And then I was in Washington Square and I saw David Peel.
I like marijuana, you like marijuana.
way like marijuana do.
Okay, I met Danny Fields in 1968. He had a way with words that made you want to become part of whatever he was doing. He brought me to Mattress, Kansas City after the show, and he bought me a steak dinner. How could I say no to a steak dinner when I'm used to eating pizza all my life on the streets?
And I told Jack Holtzman about it and saw a big crowd and thought, oh, marijuana, you like marijuana? And I said, well, there it is, and up against the wall, motherfuckers. And Jack thought, well, this is a G avant-garde, and then looked around and said, light poles, we can do this live.
We were allowed to plug into the outlet at the secret bottom of a lamppost in New York to power the Nagra tape recorder that we had out there. Some cop came up and said, you can't do that, and we showed him our fancy $600 order, and that was it, and we recorded David Peel on the Lower East Side in one afternoon. In a way, the Have a Marijuana album was this to the establishment, and we had this gigantic marijuana leaf on the cover.
William S. Harvey thought it was a terrible idea, and we had a bet. He said it wasn't going to sell 10,000, and I said I was going to sell way over 100,000, and it sold probably 600,000.
We like marijuana too. Hi.
In 1968, I became a DJ at WFMU 2 nights a week, 4 hours a night.
This is Danny Fields. This is WFMU-FM, freeform radio from East Orange, New Jersey. Going backwards up the half hour, the Beach Boys, of course, and Good Vibrations. Pearls Before Swine, I Shall Not Care. The Silver Apples program, The Righteous Brothers, You've Lost That Love and Feeling. A lot of us will be out at the Pavilion next Wednesday night to see the MC5, the Stooges, and David Peel on the Lower East Side. FMU has been the first to play any of their records, remember. As we go into the next half hour again with Otis Redding, The Cream, David Peel, Captain Beefheart, The Byrds, and the Rolling Stones.
Bob Rudnick was of our world. He was brilliant and funny and Jewish and crazy, and he wrote an alternative column called Cocaine Karma with K's and the East Village Other with Dennis Frawley, and they had a radio show on WFMU. He taught me a great deal. He steered me in directions of political activism that I thought were simply ludicrous, but if he liked them, I knew they had a little style as well, and he was right. Like the MC5, they had fabulous clothes and physiques, and they were all 6'2". They had, amusing politics and great hair.
I was coming from the Andy Warhol crowd in New York, and we were the most effete people in the most effete city and the most effete crowd, and I was so effete. I was just poised for being slammed with something that was full of blood and lust and sweat and cum and smell and vigor. And they had it.
Brothers and sisters, the time has come for each and every one of you to decide whether you are going to be the problem or whether you are going to be the solution. That's right. It takes 5 seconds. 5 seconds of decision. 5 seconds to realize your purpose here on the planet. It takes 5 seconds to realize that it's time to move. It's time to get down with it. Brothers, it's time to testify, and I want to know, are you ready to testify? Are you ready? I give you a testimonial. The MC5. Love is like a rambling roll. The more I feel it, the more it grows. Rambling rolls,
I saw them in Detroit at the legendary Grandy Ballroom. It was great. Everyone jumped up and down. There were thousands of people there. They had great costumes. They twirled and they jumped. And they landed. And that very same weekend, Wayne Kramer, who I always loved, was a great guitar player, with the MC5 then said, if you liked us, you'll really like our little brother band, the Stooges.
so many
heard the music coming from just down the hall when I got just transfixed. I've been listening to music my whole life, and it's a new take on the word music.
Now I wanna be your dog. And now I wanna be your dog. Well, come on.
The Stooges had left the stage. I got to the back of the room when this guy said, "Hi, I'm Danny Fields. I work for Elektra Records. You're a star." I thought, oh, he's probably just wants to party or hang out or pick me up or something. You know, I felt a little of that, and then we talked to him for 2 minutes after, and I knew, no, this is a real sharp guy. We couldn't play Johnny Be Good. He wasn't going to look at the Ramones and think that there was any problem because they couldn't play Johnny Be Good either. You know, they couldn't play him fucking either, you know? I bet Metallica can't play it either, you know? You know? So, whereas somebody else might, you know, want to address that issue, he didn't see it that way, you know? And this was a guy who would look at something that nobody else was really ready to see, and he'd say, people could enjoy this. People should enjoy this. This should be everywhere.
We were in the basement at Translove where John had his office. Danny got on the phone with Holtzman.
I'm going to tell them they ought to sign you guys. I said, great, Danny. Hey, go get him, baby. Tells me he saw the MC5. They were spectacular. And then they had their little baby brother band with them called the Stooges. And he says, well, I think we ought to sign both of them.
He says, 20 for the MC5, 5,000 for the Stooges. And John said, yeah. And I said, well, yeah, that sounds like a good deal to me. Okay, it's a deal. All right. Okay, see ya. See you back in New York.
It was done. Oh, by Monday morning at 10 o'clock, it was done. Here I got two of the greatest bands in the history of the world with a phone call.
Well, the Stooges, to get signed to a record contract, got a major label after about, I don't know, not a year of existence. Never really having a tune. It was just unbelievable that this would happen, you know? And I was taught $25,000. We could pay off all of our debts, you know? We could pay off our equipment. And then everybody got a leather coat, you know?
Girls, come together. Come together. Thank you. Come together. Thank you.
I wasn't cynical about him because he was too cool. He wasn't obnoxious like most music business types. I didn't know that there are powerful economic interests that control how a band ends up in the newspaper or a band ends up on television. Those were the kind of things that I wanted to learn from Danny Fields. Like all that publicity about the Doors, you made all that happen, huh? And he said, no, man, I didn't make that happen. They did that. Which is, of course, the brilliant publicist way to answer that question.
He was from the underground, not the bohemian quarter, you know, the arts and weirdness and drugs. But, I mean, he schooled me. We really liked each other. And he saw something in me that I was this raw intellectual from Detroit, you know, wanted to do some sensational shit. And I just saw him as a guy who knew everybody and knew how the shit worked. Our idea was to take over the world, you know, so first we're starting with the music business, you know, totally out of our way.
White Panther program is cultural revolution by any means necessary, including rock and roll dope and fucking in the streets.
People were wary then. I mean, it was getting serious. There was moratorium. The marches were getting more serious. The country was getting more divided. It was now getting out of hand. You could see it in Chicago. And the MC5, they called their parent organization the White Panther Party. They had a minister of defense. I don't know many rock and roll bands that had a minister of defense. People carried machine guns around the house.
Take out the jams, motherfucker!
Jack Holzman suckered us into putting Motherfucker on the record. He urged us to do this. Of course, we've got a single version, you know.
Kick out the jams, brothers and sisters!
No, man, come on, nobody will give a shit. I said, well, you know, they aren't gonna like this. We're out here in Detroit. I know they aren't gonna like it. They don't like it now when it just comes out on the stage. They really aren't gonna like it in vinyl, you know?
They put out the David Peel album, Have a Marijuana Motherfucker. We said, well, great, if they don't have any trouble with his motherfucker, they're not gonna have any trouble with our motherfucker. We told them, let the single go up the charts before you release the album, because the album's gonna have the real version, Kick Out the Jams Motherfuckers, on it. But see, they won't be able to stop us then, because we'll have a hit record. Well, the minute the single started going up, they rushed the album out. Kids are arrested in record stores for selling the album, and parents are freaked out. Then Jack Holzman says, is it okay if we put out a clean version, because we're losing money?
We had problems with a chain called Hudson's, and then the MC5 took out an ad in the local Detroit alternative newspaper, which said, fuck Hudson's, and stuck the Elektra logo on it. Everything that was an Elektra product, including Bach and Mozart, came back. We said, you can't do that. And they said, Jack, we thought you were part of our revolution. I said, no, I'm interested in documenting what you do with music in the context of that. And they said, well, we're not comfortable. And I said, oh, fine.
The MC5 should have been Grand Funk Railroad. They should have been the big, fast-moving, hard-rocking, rabble-rousing Midwestern band that Grand Funk Railroad became. When you're on the front pages of the paper, you could be making the best music in the world, but no one will pay attention to you for that. They just want to know how much you vomited and what dirty words you used and what trouble you made.
People like Danny are not even producers. I mean, there's not a quantity of work that is measurable that comes out of them every day. They're here for the hallelujah moment. Danny jumped up and down and said, you've got to sign this band, you've got to sign this band. And we saw nothing. It was one of these things that it's a prayer. The Stooges were difficult in that they did not have songs written, and Iggy was strung out, and Danny screamed out, how come you don't have any songs? You go to the hotel tonight and write songs. So I Want to Be Your Dog, 1969, all of that came out of one night's production.
Cool song, take one.
John Cale was a very talented musician, and I thought the juxtaposition of a really experienced musician in the studio with them would either agitate them or inform them. They got along pretty well. And then the problems with Bill Harvey started. He heard this and he said, are you going to put that out? And I said, I don't quite understand it, but it's interesting. And he said, well, you put that out, you're going to ruin your label. And I said, I don't think so.
People who had to say something about them say this is not music. It's the same thing they said of rock and roll. To say that was the worst thing you could say. It doesn't deserve to be called music. You know, I'm sure Wagner heard that. And anybody who did something fabulously different.
If 1967 was the year of the Beatles and Get Together, if 1968 was the year of the band and Beggar's Banquet, then 1969 might well be the year of the Stooges. You might not like it, but you can't escape it. Lenny Kaye, August 10th, 1969. Obviously written 2 minutes before I went up to Woodstock. If you were on the fringe and trying to understand who you are and you heard this bleat of sound, you know, to me these bands are a lot about yearning. They're about finding their place in the world, finding your place in the world. You know, you listen to the Stooges, I Want to Be a Dog, and you can get those 3 chords in a second, and then all you got to do is just keep turning the amplifier up, turning it up. It was a beautiful explosion of noise, and the fact that Danny was behind both of these bands is, to me, a thing of wonder.
It's like someone who talks you into buying a painting that you don't get, an impressionistic painting. You just don't get it at all. And later you find it has achieved notoriety and value that you never would have imagined.
When you're starting out in showbiz, part of what you do to figure out who you are and how you can operate is you put yourself somewhere where people who know more than you can react to you. He had an interesting spread between the world of teen vacuity way over to your very hardcore social deviance. Oh, look out.
Right up with the Stones, the Doors.
Really?
Yeah, it really is. You're going to flip out when you hear it. It's right up with those rhythm sections and the Beatles. Nobody will ever say again that we can't play. If you play it so that you can even barely hear it literally, like if you play it on 1/2 of one, it still sounds like somebody's just knocking, you know, just breaking the walls down.
What do you think the kids will think?
The kids are going to flip out of their minds.
He was on location with us in the Tropicana Motel in Los Angeles. There were the Stooges making Funhouse. Andy Warhol, Paul Morrissey, Joe D'Alessandro, Jane Forth, and the entire cast of Heat. Danny gave me something that, I don't know if he was the first one to ever give me this, but he let me try something called cocaine. And I tried it and thought, I don't feel anything. And then 3 days later, I found myself crawling in through his bathroom window at the back of the motel, taking all of his stash, you know. And that was the sort of buddy I was. I was a very bad buddy. Look, we did so many terrible things to blacken Danny's reputation and just destroy his faith in us. And we would show up very, very, very late for gigs or not at all. Or once the band was playing the intro riff and I was having sex on the bathroom floor of the men's room with a groupie, you know. Wait, I'll be right there. Tell them to just keep playing there, you know, and on and on and on and on. And then there were, you know, times when I was shooting up, and you know, not fun to talk about anymore. But yeah, that happened, and there he was, trying to get somewhere in his life.
Yeah, I finally scored my methadone.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like a thing that you're supposed to have all the time.
Well, I thought you would expect you to just keep taking that.
No, it's, you know, it's pretty easy to kick with methadone. It really is. I've kicked 3 fucking times with it, every time. Started again.
Why do you start again?
You know, I don't know. It's not even, I couldn't even answer that.
They were fucking up. I didn't know what to do. It was not something I was equipped to deal with. There's no, you cannot cope with heroin use in someone you're working with or as a partner or you're dependent on. That's the worst drug in the world. And if it's someone you love, it's tragic, but you're helpless. And everything is going to self-destruct. That's, boy. I think when I said enough was when the Stooges rented a truck and they went under one of those highway overpasses where it says, if you're over 12 feet tall, don't come under this thing. And they destroyed the truck, which the top was, you know, shaved off. They destroyed everything in it, all the instruments and stuff which they were liable for. And they destroyed the overpass. So when they got a bill from the city of Ann Arbor for whatever it cost to repair a concrete highway bridge, that was enough. So like, no, this is a sign.
I'm so proud of the way that Scott Ashton, our drummer, drove the 12-foot U-Haul under the 10.5-foot underpass. The top of that U-Haul literally peeled back exactly like Popeye's can of spinach.
Gladly handed Iggy and his music and his dancing and his band and his antics and his bills to David Bowie. I was, happy to do it. He didn't keep me on board. I got out when the going got tough. I wasn't, I could have said, I'm giving up everything in my life and I have to pee. I'm giving up everything in my life for Iggy and sweeping everything aside, and I'll move into a cheaper apartment and get a different lifestyle and stop using drugs because they're expensive, and this will all be for Iggy. Well, I didn't. I don't know if I could have.
I was staying in Danny's house, and he had gone out to Max's, and he started calling me. You really should get down here. David Bowie is down here, and you could do yourself some good. He wants to meet you. And I was watching Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, repeatedly on the verge of tears as I saw Mr. Smith confronted by the foul corruption of the status quo and the people in charge. But finally I thought, okay.
They started talking so fast about the thing I hate most in the world, music. And I was so glad to just say, they hit it off such big time because they're both so smart.
Hello?
Hi.
Who's this?
Danny.
Oh, Danny.
Yes, hello.
Hi. Are you at the Tropicana?
Yes, I am. Who's working for you?
Warner Brothers, but they aren't very bright.
No, I'll see. We should be able to get you something.
Yes, I need to work.
Yes, I want you to work.
How's the weather?
It's beautiful.
Yes?
Yes, it is. How's the weather there? It's cold, huh?
A little.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'll talk to you later, darling, okay?
Yes.
My love to Paul.
Okay.
Call me here if anything comes up, and I'll see what I could do out here, and I'll call you back and let you know, okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, for sure, I will.
Okay.
Okay, baby, be good.
You too. Bye-bye.
Midnight winds are landing at the end of time. Midnight winds are landing at the end of time.
Danny was close to the entire Andy Warhol crowd. And one day he brought Nico in. I knew who Nico was, and she brought in her little harmonium, and she sat and she played.
Oh, God of lunacy, in the moon of the frozen beyond. And as usual, he sat there when I'd bring up an artist and like, well, I guess so. Here comes John, give me John Cale on the phone once again.
Was it off the wall? Unbelievably so. But so what? It's not going to be an expensive record to make, and she's an interesting artist, and let's just see what happens.
And she sat and read books of poetry looking for a title. She found it in Wordsworth, the marble index of a mind gone something or other, and she liked that phrase. She was a poet.
Danny was having continual problems with Bill Harvey, and Bill Harvey came to me one day and he said, either Danny goes or I go.
He called me into his office, blamed me for circulating this water cooler rumor about his daughter's pregnancy, and said he started punching me in the head and saying, get out, get out.
I said, I know he's an irritant to you. I think he has value, but I probably am not going to fight you on this one. And I didn't. And it was probably the correct decision for the business, but it wasn't quite the correct decision for my conscience. Danny has always been the sand in the oyster around which you hope to grow a pearl.
And that was my last day there. It was best to leave after your boss punches you in the head. I wouldn't stick around. I was not wanted. So the Coquettes at the Palace Theater in San Francisco, and of course, I loved them. They did Pearls over Shanghai. Then they were coming to New York, so I found out who the promoter was who was bringing them here, and I said, well, let me be their press agent.
Every single time I saw him in the office at the Anderson, he was on the phone, corralling every single person who had any fame and glory in the city at the time to come to this opening, and they did. They sat there stone-faced waiting for a performance that was more polished than the kind of instantaneous anti-theater rave that we were communicating in San Francisco. The famous one is Angela Lansbury stood up and said, let's get the fuck out of here. And the audience began to flee. But Danny, unfazed, went forward with it all and got us as much press as possible. Art needs a translator like that. Danny was a catalyst for a lot of people. Some people can be artists, can be great, but they can be floating in the sphere, unrecognized or unknown. He would bring the artist into the society and put them on a platform and define the platform and say, here, this is the artist that you need to pay attention to.
At that point, as at many others, I needed a job, and my best friend, Steve Paul, said he needed a personal assistant and someone to drive him around. His dream was that the Winter Brothers were going to be unstoppable, inevitable, on television, on parades, and Super Bowls. Because what could be better than two albinos? Whoa, think of the visuals. One of them is the world's fastest blues player. That's an oxymoron. The blues is a da-da-da-da, ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-da-da-dum. So I don't know how you can be a fast blues player, but anyhow. And the other one was a keyboard player, and he wore the piano around his neck. I thought it was the most ungainly thing I have ever seen, because it was this big, long, it's like diving board, and it sort of gets like a life of its own. You know, when you turn one way, it goes the other. You know, imagine this thing, and you're playing it. Guitars are stupid looking enough. That was Steve's dream. That's okay, but you can see that was a little dispiriting. I do want to take credit for the Edgar Winters album that made Steve Paul rich, and us rich, which was called They Only Come Out at Night, and it contained the enchanting hit Frankenstein. There's like 8 minutes of one riff, and it was huge. It was just like you had time to go to the bathroom, you could make a Judy, you could put on a sandwich to roast and microwave. You could do all these things while that song was on. It's very handy. Someone had done a shoot of Edgar looking up at the ceiling, so his hair was falling down his back. Steve asked me to advise him, what do we do with this person? Turn him sideways. You know, ain't never gonna be cute. At least turn him sideways and make it look as if he's blowing in the wind. Those are the little things I do to make trouble that, if they happen, no one knows. So that's my life story. So what's the name? What's that career called? A nudgie?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Run, going faster miles an hour. Gonna drive fast and stop and shop with the radio on.
Modern Lovers in 1972 were a very hot band. Steve Paul and I recorded them and chased them, and we used to hang out with them and go to saunas at motels, and I would save the towels that Jerry and Ernie sat on. Cute people.
He would come up when the Velvet Underground would play, and they would play in Boston a lot. We would talk about the Stooges a lot, and Danny brought me to see them live at Ungano's.
I had all these drawings of myself in different positions because I was in the center of the world, and I showed Iggy and the Stooges, here's a picture of me up on the roof of the Howard Johnsons, and those are the trees, and that's the 57th Thunderbird, and there's, you know, the universe in relation to myself and everything. The Ashton brothers and Dave Alexander said, let us look at that too. So they look at my complicated drawing where I was the center of the world and everything. They looked at each other and said, give up, man. I say to Iggy, I've got so much more to say to you, and I'm shameless, you know, and Iggy, bless his heart, you know, said, oh, I've got an idea. I'll talk to you from the stage. And I went, okay. And I said, you know what I want to be? I want to be a rock and roll star. Danny says, Jonathan, don't say that. I said, why not? He says, because people will laugh at you. I go, yeah, and? It's the truth. And we would argue. We'd have fights about all kinds of things like that. He was trying to, you know, he was trying to be nice. He was trying to help me out.
One of them, albinos, was playing at a high school, and Steve Paul figured, now we'll see how good the Modern Lovers are, so we'll have them open for either one of these unappealing artists.
The audience wasn't thrilled with us exactly. It was a mutual lack of communication. But that wasn't disheartening, that was showbiz.
They wouldn't have liked The Second Coming if Jesus had flamed up on the stage there. They were waiting for albino Texas blues guitarist, and they had nothing, certainly not the Modern Lovers, who was quirky and kinky and Harvardy. They could have been killed by projectiles. And if someone had a poison dart gun, all the Modern Lovers would have been dead. So to me, that's like, hooray, must be doing something right. So that ended our quest to be associated with them. Who knows what would have happened? Who knows?
I guess when Danny uses the word inventing, he means that through his credibility and enthusiasm, he put someone on a map that they wouldn't otherwise be on. His opinion influenced most of the journalists and PR people. He just had the best taste and a way of expressing it that made you want to seek his approval. He doesn't think about money as the main definition of success. He thinks about greatness as he defines it. And if he thinks something is great, it's great. And whatever anybody else thinks, they're just idiots if they don't agree with him. So that's incredibly inspiring in terms of somebody's commitment to their own taste and clarity and vision. It's not the way to get rich.
I never turned down quick money, but I wasn't looking for it, and you have to pay for money. Steve Paul and I were both asked to see Aerosmith. He hated them as people, and I didn't love them as anything. Someone could have said, oh, they're going to be, you know, great and famous and big stars and sell a gazillion records and make millionaires out of everyone. I would have said, I don't care, good, let it happen, let someone else do it. They flew people to Boston to see them. Lisa and I were there, of course. And afterwards there was a big dinner at a cool restaurant in Harvard Square. The band came in, and the first thing, she looked at me and said, ew, he's wearing what he wore on stage to the party. Ew, I don't want to get too near him. And, you know, it's kind of like, that's one way of saying what I felt. It's one way of saying what Steve Paul felt about them.
I think what's great about Danny is that he's kind of undefinable. Danny believes that love is kind of like art. It's perfect, and sex is this dirty thing that, and it, you know, it's kind of like money and sex are down here, and art and love are up here. And he has a kind of a real conflict with that.
I mean, I look back and what am I thrilled by? Something I did? No. The best times, when they were happening, I don't think, oh, I'm living in the best time. They didn't seem so then. You don't say that on that. When you think about it or look at pictures of it, you go, oh my God, what a beautiful place. What a beautiful time of day, what a beautiful person. What did 5 important people in my life died last year? 5. I think. I'm losing count now. In 1 year. What? You know, my Achilles heel was, everything took too long to happen and I couldn't stick around for it. I wasn't going to stick around.
He becomes overly attached to the illusion of self, his self. He's a creation, Danny Fields. And I think that that's a lot of pressure. It's a full-time gig. So he lives with a kind of sense of inadequacy about his life, I think. He feels like he needs to do something he hasn't done. I'm not sure. But I think it's really basic existential despair. I think it's like the dark night of the soul that he goes back to over and over and over again. His whole apartment's kind of anthropomorphized. He's got all the files and all the things that he saved and the photographs. You know, they're spirits of all the people he's loved and known everywhere. And it's out of love that he has that stuff. He's very romantic, wanting somebody to blossom and wanting somebody's spiritual, creative, intellectual development to be fulfilled as much as you want your own, and helping them do that. He does that for so many people. That's loving.
Gloria Stavers, then at 16, who had been my supposed rival, I never got near to what she did, asked me to be her personal assistant at 16 magazine. That lasted until her final fight with the publisher, and the magazine then fell to the co-editorship of me and the brilliant Randy Riesfeld.
Danny did absolutely bring a sense of fun. It was going to be about David Cassidy, and it was going to be about Davy Jones. But he also would be interested in exposing the readers to the Ramones or what was happening on the hipper New York scene. You went through a phase where you had the Beatles, you had the Monkees, you had David, Bobby Sherman, the boom days. But then harder-edged rock and roll took over. So Danny made Alice into sort of a teen idol.
I said, there's so many rock heroes, so many Peter Pans. Where's Captain Hook? The great thing about 16 magazine was that it was Donny Osmond was the devil and I was the angel, which was kind of funny to be on the cover of 16 with Donny Osmond, because we couldn't have been further apart. Somehow Danny kind of liked, I think, that juxtaposition of the two, the opposites. I think that he loved glam rock, punk rock, and horror rock. Iggy was the punk rock guy. I was sort of the glam horror rock guy. Bowie was this space oddity glam guy. Danny was in the middle of all of it, almost orchestrating it. And those are the guys that sort of are always in the wings, but they're always the most effective people. He was always kind of helping us and pushing us.
And I said, baby, if you wanna be my lover, you better take me home. 'Cause it's a long, long way to paradise, and I'm still on my own. On my own.
Wasn't Iggy from the MC5?
No. They're along the same ground, though.
Yeah.
You know, he sings a little bit like a baby Mick Jagger. I don't really dig him because, he's one of, he jumps into the audience, and he puts meat on his body,
He cuts himself and everything.
What? Yeah, but it's like...
He cuts himself up.
And I don't like people inflicting their shit on me if I'm in the audience.
Max's was our after hours, before hours place to be. The New York Dolls were our band, but because they wore lipstick and had that attitude on the cover of their first album, they were slammed nationally. Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe knew about Max's, but they were terrified. It seemed so impenetrable and so especially the back room. Everyone was so cool. Would say, oh, there are those cute people again, which is a boy, which is a girl. And if one of them is a boy, you know, we should be fucking him. And if one of them is a girl, you should be fucking her. And they're just standing there. They look like they want to meet us. You know, let's bring them in and fuck them. At one point, I just went to them, sit down. You're here all the time. Why don't you sit down? You know, have a cup of coffee. It's free. Hey, it was Patti Smith and Robert Mapplethorpe in infancy, cultural infancy. And as opposed to Jim Morrison, she was a good poet. And he was adorable, and everyone fucked him. So that was their kickoff.
With the Patti Smith group, our sense of punk was more one of attitude. Nobody knew what the heck we were doing. Patti would come out and do a few standards, and then I'd scrub away on guitar, and we'd do some rock oldies and then some noise. Danny says, oh, I know a really great piano player, and he introduces us to Richard Soule. He's just a beautiful boy, and we're thinking, can he actually play? And then he sits down and, you know.
And I'm gonna go, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm gonna get out of here, I'm gonna get on that train, and I'm gonna go on that train and go to New York City, and I'm gonna be somebody. I'm gonna get on that train, go to New York City, and I'm gonna be so big, I'm gonna be a big star, and I will never return, no, never return to burn out in this piss factory.
And that was probably the most important thing for the development of our band and for Patti as a singer. He helped shepherd me as a young questing human into my life. 40 years later, I'm still playing, which is a beautiful thing. And Danny recognized that element in me before I even had a clue who I could be.
The Ramones and their fighting, competitive, and we hate everyone else spirit. Johnny would yell at Tommy, you know, hey, you're our publicity guy. Why isn't this guy writing about us? Why is he writing about fucking beatniks or hippies? They were also after Lisa Robinson. You know, she'd been, or was the editor of Rock Scene. And of course, Rock Scene was full of, you know, David Johansen has dinner in Chinatown, or, you know, New York Dolls buy lipstick. All pictures, all glam, nothing about music. It was just all about celebrities. Everyone was a star. Lisa and I said, oh, are you getting bothered by these Ramones? She said, oh, they don't stop. I'm afraid to pick up the phone. And I said, well, we have to get them off our backs. You go see the Ramones. I'll go see the whatever else is. She called the next day, and she said, you've got to see this band. You will love them. Their songs are all 2 minutes long. Their whole set is about 14 minutes. It's what we dream of. So I went to see them the next time they played, and it was true.
I want to go down to the basement. I want to do. I don't want to get in the basement too. Yeah, I know. That's 2 against 1. I really do. Really? Yeah, fuck you all. Come on, take it. Let's go. Quick, lively. What?
I decided within 15 seconds, because if it ever takes me longer than that to know if I like something or not, I probably don't like it. I don't want to have to wonder. You know, it's just got to knock me over like the atomic wind. This is just everything. No guitar solos. These songs are over so fast. They're all so cute. They look great. I love what they're wearing. I love that they have everything. I introduced myself to them afterwards, and I just said right away, I want to be your manager. Well, we need a few $1,000s for a drum kit, and if you come up with that, you can be our manager. Okay. So I, flew down to Florida and went to visit my mother. I just discovered this band I really love, and they're going to sign a long contract with me, and they're going to make me rich, and I need $3,000. Okay, if you're sure. And she wrote me a check, and I gave it to them, and they bought what they needed, and I was their manager.
Did you hear the way the songs start? Like you caught them in no bullshitting, and the same way they end.
It doesn't build up, man. It's there.
No, it goes at full throttle from beginning to end. It starts, it ends, and then the next one. It starts and ends, and it's the same. It just goes sailing by you.
That's such a great concept, man.
That's so insane. That's no kidding. That now you hit the nail on the head. They're crazy. That is, without doubt, the most fantastic thing you've ever played, bar none. I mean, it makes everybody else look so bullshit and wimpy. Patti Smith and me included, man. Just, wow.
Everyone else looks like a sissy compared to that.
Everybody else looks like they're really old-fashioned, that's rock and roll. They really hit where it hurts. They are everything everybody worried about. Every parent in America would freeze in their tracks if they heard this stuff. Everything, they got him an amp, they got him a guitar, and now look, there they are. Their worst dreams come true. It doesn't take any talent. All they're doing is banging it. Look at this. That is the greatest thing I've ever heard. Danny, do something, I feel like.
Let's go! My friend Linda Stein, she said, let's get Seymour to sign them. So they played for Seymour, who of course has wonderful taste and heard the songs. And Seymour was consistently, irrevocably, unstintingly supportive. Mo Austin, who was an accountant for Frank Sinatra before he became chairman of Warner Bros., Mo's a wonderful man, would say, Seymour, this band is not selling records. Did you ever think of not renewing their options? And Seymour would say, oh, no. Wherever I go, this band goes.
A lot of people have great taste, but are afraid to express it. Not Danny. Danny was quite explicit about everything. He really had so much taste, so smart, but some of his outrageous behavior, I think turned a lot of people off. Not me, never.
I loved CBs. They were packing in crowds that Hilly never imagined. It made it all the more depressing and discouraging and frustrating that we couldn't get them out of town.
We did an audition for Blue Sky Records that Steve Paul owned. And our audition was opening for Johnny Winter. It was our first time out of the city in Waterbury, Connecticut. And the curtain opens up, and here are these guys playing music from another dimension. By about the third or fourth song, we take a break. All of a sudden, out of the audience comes a...
We always played some place where no band had ever played before. A basement or loft or a parking lot or something found in an abandoned warehouse. Talking Heads auditioned, and Hilly thought they were terrible enough to play there. He asked me if they could open for the Ramones. Johnny was nearby. He was very fussy about that. And I said, they want to open for us. What do you think? He said, they really are lousy. Yeah, sure. That was his criteria. Are they terrible enough not to steal any thunder? And such a pro. So smart, Johnny. Again, the Ramones' first appearance in London, July 4th of '76, outside the Roundhouse. Paul Simonon introduced himself and said, I'm a big fan of yours. Boy, this must be really exciting for you. You sold out the Roundhouse. You've never been here before. And Johnny said, well, what do you do? We're called The Clash, but we never played because we're waiting to get good enough. And Johnny said, wait till you see us tonight. We stink. Just get out there and play. You know, wait till you see us. You know, you're not going to ever worry about being good again. And sure enough, about 2 weeks later, they started booking themselves with Clash on tour. You were not allowed to be terrible and great until these bands came along. And that was the meaning of that revolution. By traditional standards of how many notes can you squeeze into a second, like that Van Halen guy, as opposed to how much power can you get out of a performance. That was the watershed moment. Everything interesting since then has derived from that. Of course, they got that from the Stooges as well, who were terrible bands in my life. They were always kind of doing something like that. And you know what? It was always about the songs. They had every one of those bands had great songs. If they didn't have great songs, they couldn't have been great.
Next time, I listen more. Next time, well, I feel small. Next time, I listen more. Next time, well, I feel small. Next time, I listen more. Next time, well, I feel small. Next time, I listen more. Next time, well, I feel small. That girl could still be mine, but I'm tired of the hurt. I'm tired of trying. I'm tired of the pain. I'm tired of trying. I'm tired of crying.
There's no question that the Ramones suffered greatly because the Sex Pistols were so famous for vomiting and bleeding and scratching and smelling and tearing down and destroying, you know, no future, you know. It's bleak. And when their records went around to radio stations, intuitive, like, what do I know about them? Oh, they're trouble. They throw up. If we play their record, we'll probably have to have them here, and then they'll throw up on the console. It's easier. Don't play the record. Then this stigma falls on you. They're a critics band. Critics don't pay for records. They get them free. And every once in a while, they just annoy us by rubbing it in that they all like this band that we're not able to sell. The band voted to find new management in the hopes of getting these wonderful songs on the radio, and I could not fucking in any way blame them. The Ramones were disaffected teenagers for whom, in fact, there was, when they were in high school, no future. But through their work, they gave themselves a very long future. They left a legacy of no future, people. Maybe we have a future. We thought we had no future. Look at them. They can't play. They're terrible. But look, this is exciting. They're big, they're famous. They can get laid. Let's start a band. What more can you do? You're Pied Pipers out there. What? You can't pay the rent with that. You know, and a lot of these bands are going to go on to be U2 and Pearl Jam and outsell you by the zillion. Oh, it was the greatest years of my life. Traveling, the adventure, getting laid, the audience reaction, an encore, fans, getting laid. You know, I would have been a millionaire. I just stayed with them, but then again, would have had to have been their manager for 20 years. Wow, I always like to do something new that no one's ever done before.
Then he says we gotta go to Idaho, but we can't go surfing 'cause it's swimming polo.
Oh, yeah, stick with me. 40 years from now, you'll be a star. You'll be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's the worst case, but you know, Life isn't long enough to see everything that happens that we saw beginning or continuing or we thought was ending. You know, it takes more time than that when it comes to things that will endure. I have been really lucky to know or be around so many smart people, and then from that, to have so many smart people be my best friends. I thought I would never have any friends. What matters is the people, and the smart people, and the fringe people, and the beautiful people, and animals, and dogs, and nature, and art, and maybe music belongs in that list somewhere.
Then he says we gotta go to Idaho, but we can't go surfing 'cause it's 20 below. Sound checks and a 502, record stars and interviews. Oh, but I can't wait to be with you tomorrow, baby. Oh, oh, oh. We got nowhere to go, and it may sound funny, but it's true. Hanging out in 100 feet, watching Get Smart on TV, thinking about you and me, and you and me. Hanging out in LA and there's nowhere to go. It ain't Christmas if there ain't no snow. Listening to Sheena on the radio. Oh, oh. Sand checks at 502, record stars and interviews. Oh, but I can't wait to be with you tomorrow, baby. Oh, oh, oh. We got nowhere to go, and it may sound funny, but it's true. Hanging out in 100 feet, watching Get Smart on TV, thinking